How can you be happy with the bare minimum? How can you be happy when at every instance of marketable authority, you're taught, or at least your insecurities are used against you by marketers to make you feel a sense of urgency, a sense of fearfulness, in order to then have their products placed inside of that little space that's been opened up for your mind? How is it that we can feel comfortable with what we have when we're constantly being bombarded with propagandistic advertisements trying to make us feel inferior for not engaging the market, whatever's being produced in the market by this said company? It creates a lot of neuroses. It creates a lot of pathologies, which are adverse negativity that is, for all intents and purposes, anxiety. Isn't that what a marketer is supposed to do? Is to create a sort of anxiety that the person who's doesn't own the product should feel, and then that essential anxiety leads them to going out and purchasing that product. What happens when a gross amount, millions, billions of dollars, maybe even trillions of dollars, are spent in creating these massive spectacles that are proselytizing these products for these massive companies? Remember that this domain belonged entirely to the ecumenical orders of old, the ancient churches, back when there was a given story that accompanied these narratives, these attempts to win people over, to get them to succumb. They were actually enacting a sort of a culture. They were enacting their own spiritual doctrine and being a part of a community moving forward. Whereas these new elements that come in, that sweep in, that feed off of our insecurities, try to make us fearful. They sell us products and then leave what? There's nothing there. There's nothing to connect us to this given. Whatever. I've bought Clorox bleach. Now what? So that vapid space that's left over is supposed to return people to the market, right? So how can you feel a sense of fulfillment when in every instance of advertisement, marketing, you're always at odds. Your being is always at odds with what is being projected towards you. You can't buy a Lamborghini. You won't be able to afford a house in the Hollywood Hills. You might not even be able to afford the medicine that you need in order to survive if you're sick. So how can we find fulfillment in this system? I am the working class guru. I'm here to allow working class people to actualize their lives in the world of entrepreneur gurus who are consistently swooping in and teaching people that everybody can be a multimillionaire, are effectively catering only to a specific group of people who are more or less going to possibly become multimillionaires, but that's only a fragment. What we're seeing in society is that this divide between the rich and the poor is actually growing larger, and that the richer people are becoming less and less of them. It's representing more of an aristocratic society, whereby we have the corporate elites at the top, ruling class, and the serfs, peasants at the bottom. So these entrepreneurs that come in, they don't account for the fact that some of these people who are their target and giving them money to become multimillionaire entrepreneurs are not going to succeed. I'd say if we live in a world where the 1% are the successes, then out of every 100 of these all of these acolytes to these entrepreneur gurus, only 1% of those people will go on to achieve the success that the promissory note of success that these entrepreneurs are saying. I'm here to collect the fallen. I'm here to collect the people who will have no other choice but to sell their labor to one of these corporate elites. And with this comes a lot of these problems, one of which is what I've just been discussing earlier. I'm going to leave you with a quote. I'm going to just say a quote, and then we'll go on to discuss it further. The only reason why there hasn't been any reform on capitalism in regards to working class people's obtaining a larger lion's share of the national income is the belief, the ideological belief that a proletarian or a working class person is not merely being alienated and exploited for their labor, but instead that they all are merely fallen from the grace of millionaires and temporarily defaced. It's a much simpler thing. It's basically, I don't want to quote too much into communism or socialism. People have associated me with socialism and communism. I could see that. I like to use Marxism, but I'm entirely not a socialist. So how do you formulate a sense of being when you're consistently being bombarded with advertisements and marketers creating this sense of dissatisfaction with life? Because that's where it comes from, is that must be this dissatisfaction that accompanies the space to be able to put a product in there. And when you're being bombarded with that constantly unending, never ending, it creates this sense of, I could see a lot of the common neuroses and psychoses accompanying that, such as anxiety. Because that's essentially what these marketers want to create. They want to create a sense of anxiety that if you don't buy this product, if you don't live up to these normative standards of the market, these super egotistical elements that will always hold you to a standard to which you can never ever attain to, and then condemning you and making fun of you and berating you for your inability to meet these standards that nobody could never come. That's one of the ways that the super ego enacts the various drives of the unconscious is that it essentially is going to, one of the ways to overcome that is to look inside yourself, to, instead of seeking the market products that are going to meet this, just realize and extricate yourself from it. Join the working class. Talk about this with fellow working class people. Try to identify people who are in your same class, because there's people. The way that the system works is to try to make it seem as if that there's an equal footing, as if we're all equal, equality, freedom and equality for all, or attaining to this tabula rasa, if you will, that's non-existent. We all know that people who have a different connection to those means of production have a different ability to surmount and reach that level, that they're not the same as you. If I stood by Robert Kraft, for instance, him and I, there's always given to that appearance of equality. We adopt similar symbolic representations of that. That, for example, the suit, is a uniform business, visual business symbol that we all associate with work, and yet if I wear it and he wears it, you don't see any symbolic difference between the two, yet there is a super strong political and societal difference in that structure, which is why I adopt the working class garb. This is working class garb. It is what is traditionally worn by our peoples of proletarian descent, to identify ourselves against the business corporate suits, who for all intents and purposes are the modern day lords, the modern day nobility, who own the modern manners of today. And then we have so going to this is search inside yourself when you feel the need to go out and purchase things, or when you feel as if you're being manipulated and exploited by these monumental marketing campaigns to win over customers and draw a stronger customer bases to themselves. A second way to do this is to find your community. Is what I just stated earlier, is to be able to find a community of similar peoples and interests, working class peoples, technically probably in the suburbs, or or identify yourselves at work, it's far easier to identify the working class peoples at work because they don't own any massive share of the profits. They don't have very good stock options. Possibly they own a substantially less than the common person in that company, and then they're not executives. They're not part of a director's board. They're mere managers, supervisors, more or less. And you can identify them by their income, by their net worth. There's a gross difference between the net worth of a working class person and a bourgeoisie capitalist nobleman. Peace be upon them. And through this coming together of people as identifying based on class rather than, the atypical liberal story of identifying, ethnic groups or subverted minority ethnic groups, that just further dissipates the working class people actually being able to come together. And it's basically maintaining the status quo. It's not meant to give working class peoples a leg up. It's meant to keep them down, instead of identifying all the working class peoples as one: whites, blacks, Latinos, Asians. Instead of them being able to come together to surmount an equitable partnership as a peoples to leverage their own power in society, there's these narratives about race, gender, what have you, further dilute the working class's people's ability to identify their own traditions and morality and interests, and keep them as subservient sheep to be malleable, and by keeping them against each other, divided amongst each other, and their own power diluted. That might help, but also one of the spiritual benefits of this is just to have a community of people. It helps to be able to be communal. We're communal social animals, and yet we're cast into this highly competitive system where even in our community and our commerce, we're competing against one another, employees and employers. There's a dichotomy, whereas you're still afraid of losing your job, and so you succumb to this, for all intents and purposes, a small dictatorship of sovereign nation given unto one, beholden to a lord or a knight, a noble person who is essentially a capitalist. And it's stressful to be thrown and cast into this where your common man, your common brethren as working class peoples are your competitors. Another way to stave off some of the problems that come with being constantly unnerved by a system that keeps you from obtaining a lot of these luxury goods, and then chastises you for not being able to attain them, is to live a life of minimalism. We could all better learn from the feudal society of Japan, where there was some of the Zen ideologies of simplicity. Even the daimyos, if you look at the difference between the opulence lived by some of the Western medieval feudal societies, it looks like there was more of an equitable divide, more of an equitable chance of life, sustaining life under the fiefdoms of Japan, feudal Japan. I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot more minimalism in some of those cases under the daimyos and the shogunates. I just love feudal Japan, to be honest. But if we all adopt a sense of minimalism, and we can give our monies to further bettering our community, maybe a communal farm or learning farming, trying to pull some of our fellow working class peoples out of the slump of wage slavery, we might be able to surmount a chance at developing our own traditions and not needing to go to the market, and dividing our own ideologies and creating our own traditions and values. Just a sense of, and being able to live minimally would be the complete opposite of the opulence that's demanded upon us by the luxury markets. The people who try to sell us, Rolexes, Lamborghinis, these rock star lifestyles, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's funny because a lot of the music nowadays is reinforcing that rock star lifestyle. It's not the same folk stories that go along and create a heroic narrative around the working class person. Instead you see just these, he's a rock star, you gotta be a rock star, et cetera, which I think is not so cohesive with some of the ways that people actually it's a facade, and it projects false consciousness even more, and it's one of the common factors of neuroses, pushing us further down into just a slump of falsity and lies. Another way to do this is of course to be able to just do it, to become rich, become a capitalist, become wealthy, and to actually go and buy those things and realize how useless they are. After you've achieved billions, millions of dollars, maybe if you are lucky and you become a capitalist at this point, I'm going to be of no help to. I'm a guru for the working class, but I accept the given nature between the capitalists and the working class, that there needs to be a reform that recognizes their individual necessity in maintaining and sustaining this economic system. That if we're going to continue it, we need to have a balance in place. And so maybe you do become a multi-billionaire, and you're going to realize very quickly that a lot of your problems are still there. That realize that these things, when you buy them, these luxury goods or this luxury lifestyle that you desire, it's not going to be fulfilling. It's not. You'll realize these things, that most of your problems are still there. You're still going to be human. You're still going to have to succumb to the given vicissitudes of life, and you're going to realize quicker that this is not that there are better things out there. And maybe I implore many capitalists to assume the greatest asset in their company, the greatest asset to them are not only their fellow capitalists, but also their working class serf class of people who devote their entire lives to creating your wealth, to creating your profit, your surplus value that you so demand. Give back to them in, I don't know how many ways you could give back to them. That's another. Let me say that. That's how another way that you can stave off some of the problems in marketing, the marketing mind, the need to always go and get more things, get the newest product, get that, is to give back. Use that money to give it back. Be able to give to charity. Be a giver. Don't be a taker. All right. I hope that's helped you out. I am the Working Class Guru, here to help you to actualize your life, help to reform capitalism, and to create to help capitalism to get to the next level, to move. Maybe it'll be a combination of socialism and capitalism. I don't know. But all right, like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram. Go to my Patreon page and become a comrade, a contributor. Join the Congress of the Working Class. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do to show that I'm here.